The Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to lend the Coalition's comments on the Veterans Entitlements Amendment Bill 2011, and I certainly acknowledge the Minister in the House this morning. There are 3 schedules to the bill, of which the opposition will not oppose the bill, but will certainly move in the Senate for the bill, especially Schedule 2, to be examined by a Senate committee to more fully understand the issue of offsetting of compensation under multiple acts, and to allow the various ex-service organisations, DSOs, to further provide any comment to the Parliament on their view of the offsetting of compensation. Before I move into the substantive detail of the bill, it is instructive, as we deal with veterans' entitlements, to let the House know that a mere hour ago the Senate decided to vote against the private member's bill that was put in under the name of Senator Ronaldson that would provide fair, just and equitable indexation for defence pensions, i.e. DFRDB and DFR pensions, to bring them into line not only with CPI but the living cost index and the male total average weekly earnings, currently set at a bit above 27.5%. The private member's bill that was put into the Senate in honour of the Coalition's election promise that we would indeed index pensions from those in DFRDB and DFRB to bring them into line of age pensioners. It was our intent that we would rectify an injustice. Using the government's own words, today could be seen as Fundamental Injustice Day for the veterans of this nation, 57,000 of them that have served in their nation's uniform for over 20 years. In 2007, this Labor government went to the polls stating they would seek a fairer and more equitable indexation of defence pensions. That was their policy. That is what Prime Minister Rudd, then the opposition leader, took to the Australian people. That is what he stood there and promised them, that he would provide the veterans. And whilst there was no opportunity for that government to come to this House and seek to honour that promise because they chose not to take that opportunity, we stood up on the courage of our convictions. We told the veterans we would seek to legislate it, and in the Senate we did that. And an hour ago, the government, joined by the Greens and Senator Xenophon, chose to knock it down. What I find particularly vexing, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the hypocrisy, the effrontery of the Greens, who in the 2010 election went to the nation to say they would support equitable indexation of defence pensions. It was their election policy. They told the Australian people they would support it. People, I'm sure, voted for them on face value. They had the opportunity now to do it, and they've decided against it. Senator Brown clearly looked for where the savings were. We estimated the cost over 4 years at about $98 million. The government said $175 million. Let's not quibble over the numbers, Minister. We presented to the Greens and indeed to the Senate savings of upwards to $280 million by slowing the future rise of public servants from about 12.7% to 8.4%. The forward estimates that would save almost $260 million. Well, the Minister of Defence thought that was such a great idea, he took it himself and announced it as savings. The Greens wanted savings, they were given the savings, and in the hour of the veterans' need, the Greens, the Labor Party and Senator Xenophon were found wanting. At the time when they had the opportunity to stand up for the promises they made to the Australian people, they were found wanting. At a time when vulnerable veterans needed the government and the Greens the most, they were found wanting. Well, let it be known, Minister, that the opposition will continue to honour the promise we made at the 2010 election. We will take it to the next election, that we will index DFRDB, DFRB pensions by not only CPI but Matawi and the new living cost index, because we are a party that honours its promise. And that is the difference between the Labor Party and the there will be no carbon tax under the government I lead, Labor Party, and the opposition that honours its promise. When we say at an election campaign we will do something, guess what? We will do it. We won't pull stunts like the member for Lindsay in a landlocked election who just prior to the last election was seen on an Armidale-class patrol boat with the Prime Minister as if to say, I'm strong on borders. Guess what, member for Lindsay? You don't have a bloody border with the ocean. You're landlocked. What were you doing in Darwin on a naval warship apart from trying to show the Australian people in some farcical way that your party is strong on borders? Strong on borders. How many? Over 10,000 illegal people, over 225 illegal boats. Spare me strong on borders. The opposition, the coalition, will honour its promise. And the world will know, the nation will know, today, an hour ago, you decided not to honour your promise. And there's no running from that, Minister. There is no hiding from it. The veteran community know that you had the opportunity to honour your promise and you walked away from them. That, Minister, is called Fundamental Injustice Day. Moving on to the bill. Schedule 1 of this bill provides for $500 fortnightly payments to former Australian prisoners of war. Schedule 2 clarifies the operation of the Veterans Entitlements Act 1986 with respect to the offsetting of compensation under multiple acts. And Schedule 3 rationalises temporary incapacity allowances for veterans. As I've said, the Coalition will not be voting against the bill in the House, but will seek to refer it to a Senate committee to further explore particularly Schedule 2 and to give veteran organisations the opportunity to fully understand and explore the concept of offsetting of compensation under acts. In terms of Schedule 1, from 20 September this year, former Australian prisoners of war will each receive a $500 payment each fortnight from the government. It's made to former military personnel and civilians taken prisoners of war during World War II and Korea. The payment will not be taxable and will not affect former POW's present access to income support under the VEA or Social Security Act or compensation payments under the VEA. It's considered a non-taxable supplement. I'm led to believe there are 900 Australians known by the Department to be ex-prisoners of war. All known ex-prisoners of war will automatically receive the payment, which they'll receive from the 6th of October. And the Coalition certainly supports the Minister in this move. I will put on the record, as the Minister would acknowledge, the Coalition has a strong record of providing assistance to Australia's ex-prisoners of war. In 2001, all Japanese prisoners of war received a $25,000 tax-free ex gratia payment from the Australian government, extended in 2003 to former Korean prisoners of war, and in 2007 former German and Italian prisoners of war received similar payments. This, I'm sure, will be extremely welcomed by those Australian POWs who are eligible for the payment and their families, and I'm certainly glad to be supporting the Minister on this very worthwhile endeavour that he's moving to on Schedule 1. Schedule 2 of the bill seeks to clarify the operation of compensation provisions under the Veterans Entitlement Act. Compensation offsetting is indeed a long-standing principle under our repatriation system. The fundamental principle of the system is that compensation is paid for incapacity, not for a specific injury. The Coalition believes that the changes proposed by this schedule should be investigated by a Senate committee to fully understand and to fully explore whether there are any unintended consequences or any issues that need to be teased out of some of these moves in Schedule 2 to deal with the compensation offsetting. We'll seek to refer the bill to enable the ex-service community an opportunity to have their input into the proposed changes. I think that's fair and reasonable. Schedule 3 will rationalise the way incapacity payments are paid under the Act. The changes in the bill will remove the temporary incapacity allowance. Instead of receiving this payment, this allowance, veterans will be entitled to seek access to the loss of earnings allowance, the LOE. The LOE is paid where the veteran accrues an actual loss of earnings as a result of hospitalisation or treatment or of accepted disabilities or illnesses. We are not opposed to the rationalisation. However, as I look at the Minister, I certainly call on him to ensure that changes are appropriately communicated to the veteran and ex-service community. Minister, if there was ever a time for the government to spend some money on advertising or getting a message across, ditch the climate change nonsense in terms of its advertising, spend some money on this, sir. Ensure that changes are appropriately communicated so veterans understand fully exactly what's being proposed. There is certainly, when it comes to the veteran community, nothing like ensuring people are well and truly informed to take away any risks, to take away any anxiety they may indeed have when it comes to change. Much change is good. It's better when it is communicated well. In terms of wider veterans issues, the Minister and I have discussed this at length in consideration in detail on the budget a mere day or two ago. But it's worth reiterating to the House some of the concerns the Coalition continues to have with the government and how they're working through the veteran portfolio. And with credit to the Minister, he's a very busy Minister. Minister for Veteran Affairs, Minister for Defence, Science, Technology, Personnel, Minister for Aboriginal Health, Minister assisting with respect to the Anzac Day celebrations. And I can only wonder at what else the Prime Minister has given such a busy Minister. Our view, though, is veterans is of such importance there should be a minister dedicated to it. Technology, science, defence personnel when we're at war is such a busy ministry, there should be a minister attached to it. When it comes to Indigenous health, such a significant issue in its own right, it should be either attached to another portfolio or indeed perhaps another parliamentary secretary. So what we have is a minister really doing the job of three ministers, which I no doubt some could say that the minister sitting here in front of me has the capacity to do that. But seriously, three jobs for a full-time minister on one set of shoulders, something always has to give, Minister. Something always has to give. And look, it's maybe not your fault, Minister. The problem lies with the Prime Minister, who has so loaded you down with work that perhaps you're unable to provide the full set of oversight that you know is necessary in the portfolio. Because we're deeply disappointed. Deeply disappointed there is no money in the budget for the commemoration of the Anzac Day centenary. I know you're looking to announcements at the end of the year. However, there's no money in the budget, so an announcement with no money makes it a little difficult for you to spend a cent, Minister, up until 30 June next year. Communities across Australia need certainty about the availability of funding. The
Shadow Minister
to do this because
the Minister has the call.
I'm loath to do this because I'm entertained, but I would ask them that the Shadow Minister come back to the purposes for which the bill that we're actually discussing, which would be useful.
I thank the Minister, and certainly being entertained is not one of the standing orders, so I will ask the Shadow Minister to come back to the topic of the bill.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will return to the bill which looks at veterans' entitlements, and it goes to the very nature of veteran entitlements that the Minister has the capacity to ensure that the schedules within the bill are indeed capable of being met. It's therefore incumbent upon me, as part of Her Majesty's loyal opposition, to actually outline where this Minister, who I have led to, is so overworked he lacks the capacity in short of hours of time to be able to lend his full attention to the portfolio to ensure these schedules are met. And it's incumbent, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I outline to the Parliament the areas where this very busy Minister is being shown to have let down on dealing with veterans' entitlements because of the busyness.
I'll just interrupt the Shadow Minister to say I appreciate the link that he is drawing, but I do think it's a rather tenuous link, and I would ask him to more directly address the topic of the bill.
I will, Madam Deputy Speaker. If we can move on to the Australian War Memorial, which of course has a...
I'm sorry. I'm going to stop the Shadow Minister. I appreciate the attempt to draw the longer bow, but I'm indicating to you it is not an acceptable longer bow, and I would ask you to come back to the actual details of the bill before us.
Madam Deputy.